Hello folks. So I made a few phone calls today. I phoned up the solicitors saying again, this is probably about the fourth time now, asking them to get a copy of the transfer of ownership paperwork from the SSPCA, because the SSPCA clearly stole my dogs on that situation. So yeah, obviously I want the sheriff to know that, and if the sheriff actually knows that, she's going to ask for proof. So therefore, obviously, they need proof of that to show the sheriff that that actually happened in that way. So okay, well, because like I say, the person from the SSPCA that came over on the day, when she came over, she said that actually it's not fair than doing it now, because they know that I don't really have a chance to appeal because of the time of the year. And yet they still did it, knowing that it wasn't fair them doing it. So legally speaking, a bit dodgy to say the least. Anyway, as I knew I probably wouldn't get anywhere from there, I eventually phoned up the SSPCA to see if I could get them to send me a copy, because I don't have it. Because obviously after that I didn't want anything to do with that paperwork, so binned it straight away, because obviously, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a good time for me, really, that. Obviously not. Well, because, you know, the situation is that there wasn't really any way that I could appeal. I could have made a fuss about it, I suppose. I certainly couldn't have made a fuss afterwards about it. But financially, I wasn't really in a situation to be able to do it, to hire a solicitor to do that. Plus, at the time, I thought it might be the best thing to do, based upon the fact that I was being told by the SSPCA lies, because they were telling me that the court case could take 2 years because of COVID to happen. Well, I think they probably knew it wouldn't. And so, yeah. So of course, I phoned them up, thinking that I might be able to get them to send. And the person I spoke to couldn't even find anything on the records at all about that. Couldn't find a thing to say that the dogs are now theirs, not mine. Couldn't find any paperwork at all, or any evidence of paperwork, or that actually happened. But then when I said about it, he said, because I also said, it'd be nice for someone to give me a call to tell me how the dogs are doing, because nobody spoke to me for quite a while, since probably around about March. Yeah. So it'd be nice to know if they're doing okay, or if there's any issues with them. He said they've probably been sold already. I'm like, yeah, well, that's a possibility. Yeah. To be honest, would that surprise me if that's the case? No, not at all. It wouldn't, because, yeah, I've said before on here that... Sorry, I'm just picking something up. A bit of rubbish on the floor. Yeah, I've said before that God basically has said to me that my dogs won't be walking in this area. Yeah, in that area, or Fairy Village Woods, or, you know, Stinky Woods, or coming down these steps to my place again. Well, he's also told me that I was innocent of the charges. Now, the problem is, I assume from that he's telling me that my dogs are coming back. No, because just because God's telling me I'm innocent, it doesn't mean that I will be found innocent. It doesn't mean that just because God wanted my dogs to be taken away, so I could go to LL and go through all that stuff that I went through for all that time, it doesn't mean that they're coming back. It just means that you want them taken away. So, yeah, it would not surprise me in any way, shape or form if they've already been rehomed. And yeah, well, because even early on, very early on. I mean, even before the transfer of ownership paperwork came, that they did that. Early on, my expectation was that they are going to rehome my dogs, and then it'll be a case where I will eventually be decided that I'm not guilty, and I'll be suing completely the SSPCA for a house load of money to basically to destroy the SSPCA. That's what my thinking was. Well, as soon as this bloke said the dogs had probably been sold, that was the idea that came back into my head. Oh, so we're going to do that, are we? That's what it's going to be then. Yeah, and I was saying to God, what would I rather have? Would I rather have 100 grand or 100, 200 grand? Or would I rather have my dogs back? I'd rather have my dogs. I'd rather not have the money. But the money's going to be his anyway, so therefore, yeah, I'd rather have the dogs back because they're my family, so therefore. But I think it'd be neither. I don't think it'd be money or dogs. No, I don't. Yeah. Well, because chance after chance after chance after chance after chance for God to do something, and has he done it? No. That means, is he going to do it? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I can't get to that point again, certainly not at the moment, nowhere near, of thinking that God's going to do something, because I mean, tomorrow it's quite likely I will get a call back from, or early next week, I'll get a call back from the lady who dealt with the case. And the reality is, she will probably tell me that dogs have been rehomed. Yeah. And with that being the case, I'm then in the situation of, and I've been talking to God about this today, I'll then be in the situation of, okay, Father, for the last 14 months, you've encouraged me to believe that my dogs are coming back. That you took them away for a reason, which means you'll be bringing them back. And when I've come to you about that, I was under the impression that you will be bringing them back. And that even when it was a case of the transfer of ownership, you were telling me to trust you, and that even if the ownership was transferred over, it didn't mean I wouldn't be getting them back. And now I'm going to find out it did mean I wouldn't get them back. Yeah. Is that a distinct possibility? Yeah. Yeah. Of course it is, yeah. So, yeah. Well, I mean, look, the reality is that I was watching something today, and a young lady, I watched some of her videos. She's a lady from America who's living in Argentina, and she does a lot of stuff, but she does mainly reaction videos. But she's quite good at her reactions. She shows her expression on her face. She has more expressions when she's reacting or listening to it than most. So she's a little bit better at that. Plus, she covers herself up. She's respectful in that way, so that's good. Mandy Kane Lane is her channel. But she was doing one about Ricky Gervais and people with him, and they were talking about the voice in your head, and that when you're thinking in your language and your voice, and basically most people have that. That when they think, it's their voice and their language. It's a narrator, that sort of thing, in your head. The problem with that is, and this is a big problem, and I think it's a big problem that a lot of people do face, is that quite often we hear stuff, we get stuff in our head, and we think it's God, and it isn't. The times when I believe it is God, for me, is when I hear something that I wasn't even thinking about, I wasn't even considering, and if that just comes into my head, well, okay. It's an interesting point to consider where that might have come from. And so sometimes I know that God has given me stuff because it was stuff I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. Nowhere near. So when I got the point about you're supposed to go through the word to a relationship with Father, I was never there thinking that beforehand. So that didn't even come into my mind. Before that, I wasn't looking into it, I wasn't considering it, I wasn't asking the question about, are we supposed to do that? So when that came into my mind, then okay. Same as the 8 months. When that came into my mind, I was speaking to Bianca previously, saying it could be 2 years. Then the very next morning, as I woke up, I heard 8 months. Well, that's what came into my head very strongly. It was almost as if I heard it. That's why I say I heard. I didn't actually hear. But 8 months. And yeah. I wasn't actually thinking about that timetable. I certainly wasn't thinking 8 months would be possible. Someone who's married. Yeah, because, especially if they're reasonably happily married, coming to the point of, being willing to let that go can take time. Yeah, people tend to try and fight for it, and that can delay. From realization that it's not supposed to be right for it to end can be a long, long time. So I wasn't expecting it to be anywhere near that early. There's been a lot of stuff. Even like the point about the dogs. The dogs won't be walking here, and they won't be coming down these steps again. Again, that wasn't me. I wasn't thinking about will the dogs be walking in this area again. Well, because obviously there was the idea about moving because of wife. Because if I get married, there's not enough space in this place for me and a wife for our stuff. So we'll have to move. I'll have to move. But then when that was not going to happen, that was no longer a possibility. But I'm pretty sure that most of the points of me moving, or that the dogs won't be walking in these woods or whatever, has come after that point in time. After the end of June. I think that's when I got that stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, that wasn't amongst my thinking at the time. So, but as I say, none of that meant my dogs would be coming back. And as I say, me being innocent of the charges, because the charges are talking about suffering, that what I did caused suffering. And as I said, they've also said in the charge that you should have known it could cause suffering. And as I say, that's BS, because we don't think about what we're doing until we stop doing it, and therefore you should have known is rubbish. Because basically you can say to anyone in that court, okay, have you ever driven when you were tired? If you have, okay, then you are guilty of attempted murder. Because you should have known that if you're driving when you're tired, there's a very good chance you can have a crash. If you have a crash, then you know there's a very good chance someone could die. So therefore you should have known you could kill someone if you drive dangerous, if you drive tired, because it's dangerous. Because you're not as alert. So therefore, can you please arrest this person in the court and get them on trial for murder? Of course, you wouldn't do that, would you? So you can't have that in this case. If you can't have it in any other case, you can't have it in these sort of cases. All this idea that you should have known it could have, well, you can apply it to absolutely anything. And as I say, with regards to even my lawyers, they really annoy me. Their whole attitude of, well, you are guilty because we've seen the video and it looks like. Yeah, but as I've said to them, okay, show me at any point in there, like Mr. Tom, he looked and listened for over 40 minutes to, about the 2-minute video. He watched it over and over and over and over again and listened to it over and over and over and over again, trying to find a point where he can actually say, there, that's the point where they're suffering. Couldn't find anything. As I said, if you can't prove it, then you can't be having that in your head as my lawyer. You cannot be representing me if that's what you've got in your head. And if you can't prove it, then drop that idea from your little tiny head. The little tiny brain you've got in your head, drop that idea from that. Because you should know that in a court of law, it's proven. You have to prove. It has to be proven. Simply because you think something might be the case. I mean, if I'm looking at my solicitor and I'm saying, I think you're a complete moron, so really you should be in a mental hospital because you're an absolute complete moron. You need to be taken care of. You need to be in special needs because you're not capable of taking care of yourself. Does that mean that's true? No, that has to be proven, the same as everything else. If they suddenly came in and dragged him off and stuck him in a diaper because he's a complete moron, not even capable of going to the toilet himself, I think he would have every right to complain about that, don't you? Yeah. Well, anyway, as you can tell, I'm not out of the darkness yet with regards to this situation. Well, there you go. Maybe it's a mistake phoning the SSPCA. But the problem is I can't trust my solicitors to get the paperwork. I can't trust them, even though they're supposed to be working for me. They're getting paid to do the job. And yet, they won't do the job. So anyway, there you go. You take care. God bless. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.